Hello and welcome back. In tonight's edition of Focus, we take you to the University of Tehran, one of the political centres of the Iranian capital. Now, in many ways, it's a microcosm of Iran's current crisis. Religious figures preach from the university every week during Friday prayers. It's also a place where students debate politics and religion, a hotbed of ideas. Well, our correspondent Alain Chabot is one of the few Western journalists who has managed to gain access to the university. Yet rare are those who speak out openly against the regime. Now, our correspondent brings us this exclusive report made last week, just a few days before those bloody protests in which at least 8 demonstrators were killed. Take a look.
This is the Tehran University campus. It's the oldest higher education institute in the country and has the best reputation. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, it's also been a site of Tehran's Friday prayers. The authorities have granted us permission to film on the premises for 1 hour. We want to talk politics with the students, but many are reluctant. Since the presidential elections in June, the international press has become something of an unusual sight in Iran.
I don't have an opinion on the question, but there is complete freedom of speech here.
With this being Iran's main university, we do feel the effects of what's going on in the country. There are different opinions among students.
Everything seems calm, but one student is going to draw our attention to something we had overlooked.
Right now, there's a meeting just over there. Students can speak freely. It's much better that way.
Just a few metres away, a monotonous chanting can be heard. We continue to film discreetly as we approach. It's an illegal gathering in memory of Ayatollah Montazeri, a leading figure of the Iranian opposition. Basijis, the regime's militiamen, are keeping an eye on the demonstration. About 20 students are brandishing portraits of the recently deceased Shiite cleric, but a university guard asks us to stop filming. Later, we meet a group of young students dressed in Western clothes. They agree to talk to us, but only if we blur out their faces. One asks us to film only her green shoelaces, the opposition's rallying colour.
There isn't even an office provided for the opposition at the university. Those who oppose the regime can't express themselves. There is no student opposition organization.
On December 7th, the National Student Protest Day, we gathered as we do every year. But everybody was shocked because there were buses packed with Basijis dressed in plain clothes. They stepped in and they were the ones who caused all the trouble. Some students tried to stop them, and many were arrested. Here at the university, there are few protesters and they are isolated. The Islamic Vigilance Committee quickly points them out, and they end up being kicked out.
One of these outspoken students says she wants to leave Iran to study in the United States. Another confessed she spent a week in jail after taking part in a protest following the elections. She's still waiting for her trial to take place.
Now, for more on that, I'm joined by Jamshid Asadi, a professor and political activist based in Burgundy, who's written several books on Iran. Thank you very much for being with us for this edition of Focus. I'd like to start by asking you what role you think students are playing in the political and social crisis at the moment in Iran.
That your report is a very good report. It's very true that the students are very active in Iran, as even today, students in different universities were on a strike and they demonstrated. But the thing is, this is not the only aspect of Iranian social unrest. This is a very social and, let's say, civil society unrest against the current politics and the current policies of the government.
So you're saying that this is a social revolution that's not just limited to a student movement?
Revolution probably not yet, but certainly this is very social. You have intellectuals, you have writers, you have entrepreneurs, you have women, you have youngest. You have, all different people you can see in different demonstrations in Iran about different people for different interests. But this is not certainly an exclusive young and student movement.
But in the Iranian population, an awful lot of people there are an awful lot of young people proportionally to other countries.
The population is very young, so this is very normal that you see more young people within the demonstrations and in the street. But you cannot forget the role of the intellectuals, what they have played. Even very religious people who are reformists, women, and while all other classes, social classes you can imagine, well, by all means, because of the demographic structure of Iran, you see many more young people in the street. But I would like, again, one more time to put emphasis on the fact that this is a very social movement now in Iran.
And we saw in that report that some of the students that they feel uneasy about speaking out, that they're afraid, and one reason for that is that there are militias patrolling the universities. Have you heard more reports about that?
Oh, certainly. I like very much the title of your report, Tehran, a microcosm of what's happening in Iran. Well, in small cities, people are unhappy, and they would like to join this social movement, national movement. They do much less, though. Why? Because in a small city, they can be recognized much easier by the militia, Basiji, as they call them in Iran. Well, this is the same reason for which people cannot express easily, because, today, for example, there is a movie on YouTube you can go and see. They just come with cars within the different lines of people just to kill them easily by militia. So people hesitate before expressing easily.
And you're an expert as well on new media. Now, can you tell us the role that bloggers have played in this crisis and in the opposition movement?
Blog, YouTube, and Web 2.0. This is probably the largest and first revolution of the new kind in the 21st century. Civil society, thanks to those media, Web 2.0 essentially, blog is one of them, gets organized directly, without any direct leader, without any direct political organization behind. So this is certainly very, very important, and I can take a guess of what's going to happen tomorrow and the day after tomorrow and next week, thanks to those media.
And after this report that we just saw, of course, was made before the violence this weekend and those 8 deaths this weekend, do you think that as a result of that the opposition will now start to radicalise? Because traditionally they sort of based their ideas on pacifistic movements inspired even by Mahatma Gandhi. But now with this violence, do you think that they might become more radicalised?
The Green Movement is pacifist. The Green Movement is, again, for a very pacific solution to this situation. But don't forget 2 things. Number one is that the government wants violence. Government and the power wants violence in order to give some legitimacy to its own violence. So this is provoked. Mainly this is provoked. But I cannot forget that on the other hand, probably to a much lesser extent, that some people are disappointed. They cannot just continue like this. For example, yesterday, the contested President Ahmadinejad says they are not Iranian, this is not genuine, and they are supported directly by the foreigners. People cannot accept this.
Professor, you're an activist based here in France. What type of regime would you like to see in Iran?
I would like, just very honestly, I think the best thing is just let the media talk about what's really happening in Iran. It does not bother me if you give, for example, your antenna to Ahmadinejad, to even the guide, but let people talk again and explain. The best thing, and I love to do that, as the French call it, face-à-face, with some people from the other side, and let the people then judge.
Professor Jamshid Asadi, thank you very much for joining us. That's all we've got time for this edition of Focus. Do stay tuned to France24.
In Iran, the opposition is becoming more radical by the day. Repression is ever more violent. We went behind the scenes to find out what's really going on. In this special edition of the Week in the Middle East, we meet with students at Tehran University, an opposition stronghold. Get a rarely heard version of the Clotilde rice affair from Iranians. Take a tour of the Isfahan nuclear facility. Win an exclusive interview with former Iranian President Hashemi Rafsanjani. The Week in the Middle East, Friday, 6:40 p.m. Paris time on France 24.